This is the third video for the public speaking workshop that COM 200 is doing as a service project. Now, we've already talked about why we're doing it. We've talked about introductions and conclusions. We're going to next speak about how to structure the body of a speech. Again, your basic English composition understandings will help you quite a bit here. So essentially, we want anywhere from 2 to 5 main points. However, I like to say that people really respond well to 3 main points. I'd like to encourage the fourth graders to use 3 points if possible. It's easy for audiences to remember, and there's something about it that just feels right as an audience member when there are 3 points. So we'll try to get them to do 3 main points. One of the important things is that we help them to cluster their information instead of having a stream of conscious delivery where just they talk about things in the order they think about them. And so if we just take a little bit of time to help them order or to cluster their content, it will help the audience to understand much better. Let's say, for instance, I'm going to give a speech about cats. And there's all sorts of things that I could talk about. I could talk about short-haired cats. I could also talk about wild cats. I could talk about particular breeds like Burmese. I could talk about my cat. I could talk about American short-haired cats, and maybe long-haired cats, about a particular cat named Smittens. I could talk about lions. I could talk about Persians. I could talk about a job that someone used to have. I could talk about Siamese cats. I could talk about tigers and black and white tuxedo cats. Now that's just all this big old clump of information, and if I were a kid, I would pretty much just do this in order of how I'm thinking. I would start out with an introduction. I love cats. Everybody loves cats. Who doesn't love cats? Actually, that would be a horrible introduction. So let's think, how could we get people's introduction? Meow, meow. Do you hear that? That's the sound of a cat. I love cats more than I love any other animal, and let me tell you why. Okay, so there's an introduction. Now, if I were a kid, though, with the body and these are the things I want to talk about, this could get kind of jumbly. So there are lots of different kinds of cats. There are short-haired cats, but you know what? Short-haired cats are ones that live in your house, but there's also wild cats, which are really cool. And I don't know if you've ever seen a Burmese, but they're really pretty. They're kind of like Siamese, but with long fur. But oh, wait a minute, let me tell you about my cat, because I have a cat, and that's one of the reasons I like cats. And my cat is a particular kind of cat called an American short-haired cat, but there are other kinds of cats called long-haired cats too. But Smittens is not a long-haired cat, and Smittens is not a lion. No, nope, Smittens isn't a lion. Smittens is, well, you know what I'd really like someday is a Persian cat. Would you like a Persian? They're so pretty, but they have kind of a smushed face. You know, my dad, he used to work on this job, and somebody had a Persian cat, and they brought it to work one day, and I was there, and it looked like somebody dropped the cat on its face, and its nose just got pushed in. So, but you know what? My dad's not on that job anymore. But a Siamese. I've always kind of wanted a Siamese too. And when I go to a zoo, I really like tigers. But you know what? That's not what my cat is. My cat is a black and white tuxedo cat. All right, so this is not how you want the child's speech to go. So we take those basic bits of information and we try to cluster them together. So if I'm going to talk about cats, I am going to talk about these various topics. I'm going to talk about short-hair cats. I'm going to talk about long-hair cats, wild cats, and then my cat. So first thing I'm going to talk about short-hair cats, such as Siamese, a Manx, domestic short-hair. I'm going to tell everything I want to tell about short-hair cats in this one section. When I'm completely done with short-hair, I'm going to move on to long-hair cats, such as Persians or Burmese. And I'm going to completely cut out the thing about my dad's job where he used to work and somebody had a cat. It doesn't fit well in this cluster. Then I'm going to move on and talk about wildcats. This is my third point. I'm talking about lions and tigers, and we'll cut out the bears. Oh my. Then my fourth point here, because I'm going to do 4 points instead of three for some reason. I'll talk about my cat, which is a domestic short-haired black and white tuxedo cat named Smittens. So clustered information makes it really easy for audiences to listen and to understand, and this is simple for you to work with the students with. It just takes this little bit of knowledge that you need to do it. Now let's talk about the delivery. How do we want these kids to have the delivery? Some of the kids you work with, you won't need to worry about this because they are going to only be working on the research and writing of the speech. But there will probably be a few of them who are ready to work with delivery, who have gotten a bit of the research and organization done ahead of time. So the first thing is it's best to have a delivery that's conversational, that it sounds like the fourth graders just talking to us. So it's better than having them read a speech robotically. It's better than having them just memorize the speech, although some of them will do that. And it's okay. Go ahead and encourage them with whatever style they seem most comfortable with. But the ideal in public speaking is to be able to sound as if the speaker is just talking to the audience, that it's very natural. We want the speech, if possible, to sound like this particular fourth grader. We don't want this fourth grader to sound like everyone else. So, a couple of the don'ts. In general, we do not encourage reading or memorizing. But if your fourth grader is really tied to this, if they're like, oh my goodness, I have to read it, or I've already memorized it, it's okay. Give them encouragement with what they're set on doing. But if they don't have any preconceived notion, just help them write down some key words so that they'll remember what their next point is, but they can put it into a sentence once they get in front of the people. Now that's a little threatening for some fourth graders, so I don't push that too far, but that's the ideal. So the do's, write down a few keywords, put those keywords into sentences when you're in front of us. All right, so next thing in delivery, some basics about eye contact. The ideal is to have the fourth grader looking at the audience 75% of the time. So they should be looking up at people much more than they should be looking down at their notes. The best way I know to think about this is to divide the room into thirds. You have the left side, you have the center of the room, and the right side of the room. And I would like to teach just making systematic sweeps of the room. So if I start looking at the left side of the room, I'll look at people on the left side, then I'll move to the center or the middle of the room, then I'll look at the right side of the room, then I'll sweep back to the middle side of the room, go back to the left, glance down at my note cards, look at the middle, look at the right then. Perhaps I might glance at my note cards again, and then go back to the middle, to the left, and just systematically look at these places. It's much better than left, right, left, middle, left, right, middle, left, right, middle, where it's just all jumping around where it doesn't look smooth. This very easy scanning from one side to the next and back is the best way to go. Now for the voice, we want the fourth graders to sound like themselves, only better, and by this, just a little bit more formal. We want them to sound like they do on a regular basis, just if they were being slightly more formal than if they were talking with their best friends. Maybe the voice that they would use for speaking with their teacher would be something that we could strive for. But they should use the same type of inflection, which is how they vary their voice. The up and down of their voice should sound natural for them. We don't want them to sound like a newscaster or sound like they're trying to be President Obama. Nothing like that. It should be very natural to them. So we want them to try to vary their voice. It could be sometimes they could speak louder, sometimes they could speak softer, Or maybe it's about the inflection with the voice going up and down. Lots of ways for our voice to try to get interest. And sometimes they could speak fast, sometimes they could speak slow. But get some variety in there is this basic idea. I try to tell them not to try to sound really smart or hyper intelligent, just sound normal. So, what happens when they just don't know what to say next? Maybe they've lost their point. What happens next? I try to tell them to be silent. Don't say or just pause, get their thoughts together, and then continue. Hand gestures. Gestures are good, but not too many of them. Try to have them, if they're going to practice, don't have anything in their hands. They shouldn't have pens or paper clips, etc., because we just tend to play with these things and the audiences will just stare at our hands and what we're doing. Try try to keep those hands um, fairly empty, other than their speech, which can be in their hands. They shouldn't stick their whole hand in their pocket. It looks really awkward. If they want to put a hand in a pocket for a small while, that's okay. We usually say leave your thumb out, and then it's a nice smooth way to put your hand in your pocket. Uh, some kids are going to be comfortable with hand gestures, some are not. And it's actually okay if they want to, for the most part, have their hands just kind of down at their sides. That's okay. It's better to have no distracting gestures than to have a lot of distracting gestures. So calm is better than like people playing with their hair or their nose, uh, their face, playing their hands, playing with each other. So it's okay for calm hands. But if they're comfortable, let's get a few hand gestures out there. Movement. They can move a little bit, but they shouldn't pace. So they don't want to start walking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth a lot. We want to just sometimes maybe they make a movement, walk from the middle of the room, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to the right, stop, talk to the audience. Then they could move back to the middle, stop, talk to the audience. Then they could move to the other side, the few steps, stop, talk to the audience. So that's fine, but just don't do the move while you're talking, pivot, and immediately come back while you're talking. That becomes pacing. They should try not to get stuck behind a podium, and this is good because in general, 4-H actually doesn't let them use a podium. So if you practice with them, they could have a podium to make it seem, because it does kind of help you to feel a little bit more official, but they should try moving just a little bit away from it. Uh, they should avoid the rocking or bouncing on a hip where they're shifting weight from one foot or one hip to the next. And if they're wearing sandals or flip-flops, they shouldn't take shoes on and off, which sounds really obvious, but I can't tell you how often that happens. All right, so there's some of the basics about the public speaking. I think you will have a fantastic time with these children if you just for this hour and 15 minutes that you're working with these kids, you put all of your energy into communicating that the child you're working with has worth and value, has good ideas, and can do this. We've been working on communication skills the entire semester, and I have faith that you can make a difference in this kid's life. See you at Michigan Avenue School. Bye-bye.